In 1699, the Louisiana colony was founded by Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville, a ruthless and successful French-Canadian military commander. He founded the colony in part as a military venture, the grand design being a great Northern American colony connected by waterways and Indian alliances from Quebec to the mouth of the Mississippi River. Such a colony would box in the British and hopefully increase the power and wealth of France. Jean-Baptiste Le Moyne de Bienville, Iberville's younger brother, accompanied the expedition. He earned fame when he bluffed a British expedition that was coming up the Mississippi River. The British turned back and would not return to the area until the War of 1812. Bienville made alliances with the Choctaw and the Tchetoka and founded Ocean Springs, Mobile, Natchez, Biloxi, and New Orleans. Bienville would govern Louisiana no less than 4 times, often forced to clean up the failures of other governors. Under Bienville's hand, the colony grew slowly. Although skilled at native diplomacy, Bienville often bickered with his fellow Frenchmen, such as the haughty Antoine de Cadillac. He disliked mainland Frenchmen, who for their part were often dismissive of French Canadians despite their ignorance of frontier life. The French government was little help, particularly as they treated Louisiana as a penal colony for thieves, smugglers, vagrants, and prostitutes. Somehow, Bienville pieced together a decent defensive force, but failed to do anything during the War of the Quadruple Alliance. Regardless, mismanagement and constant bickering undermined his achievements. The French fell afoul with the Natchez and Chickasaw tribes to the north. The Natchez were all but destroyed in a brutal war known for mutual atrocities. Some of the surviving Natchez took shelter with the Chickasaw, who in turn raided Choctaw villages and enslaved the captives, selling them off to the British. Seeking to destroy the remnants of the Natchez and to aid his Choctaw allies, Bienville planned a grand campaign for 1736. He declared, "It is absolutely necessary that some bold and remarkable blow be struck to impress the Indians with a proper sense of respect and duty toward us." Bienville wanted to attack the cluster of 9 Chickasaw and Natchez villages near present-day Tupelo, Mississippi. At Mobile, local defense troops and slaves brought to fight with promises of freedom were amassed. They were reinforced by native allies and French soldiers shipped from the mainland, including elite Swiss and Grenadier units. The force numbered 1,000 men. The plan was for Bienville to attack the Chickasaw from the south, while a column of 400 soldiers and native allies from Illinois would merge with Bienville's force. The Illinois column was led by Pierre d'Artaguet, who was a brave frontier fighter who distinguished himself while fighting the Natchez. Opposing the French was the great Chickasaw chief Mingo Oma. His name meant red clay, and he drew his lineage and power from his ancestors' use of clay. He was a war chief, and therefore led warriors into battle, but did not handle domestic affairs. He relied on the Chickasaw's chain of fortified villages to blunt the French attack. D'Artaguet discovered that Bienville was late and decided to attack the Chickasaw. He was desperate for supplies and hoped to plunder Chickasaw towns to pay his native allies. He struck the village of Ogoula, Tchetoka on March 25th. His force was attacked in the flank by Mingo Oma's warriors and nearly annihilated. D'Artaguet was wounded 3 times and captured. D'Artaguet, the great French explorer François-Marie de Vincennes, and 19 other French captives were executed by the Chickasaw. Most were burned alive. Father Zenot, a Jesuit missionary, sang a hymn as he perished in the flames. Bienville's southern force approached the main cluster of Chickasaw villages after a tough march. The French government failed to send Bienville cannons, so he would have to storm the villages. Bienville also did not know of D'Artaguet's fate and failed to find out what happened to him. On May 26, the French observed a British flag flying at the village of Appione, indicating that the British traders were present. To avoid an international incident, Bienville chose to attack Ackia instead, although it was a better defended town. Bienville relented, but was goaded into action by his second-in-command Chevalier de Noyan and Red Shoes, one of the Choctaw chiefs. The Choctaw in particular were eager for a fight. They killed peace emissaries sent by Imeteyeba, the chief of Ackia, who favored peace with France. The French had to storm the town using makeshift shields to protect themselves. The assault, though, was a bloody failure. Red Shoes complained that the French moved with too slow a step and so close together that it was impossible for the Chickasaws to fire without killing some of them and wounding several. Bienville's men broke and ran. Several attempts were made to rescue wounded French soldiers left near the ramparts, but this mostly added to the casualty list. The column returned to Mobile. Combined French and native Allied losses were 300 to 400 for both battles. Chickasaw losses are unknown, but likely no more than 50. Relations with the Choctaw were strained, as Bienville blamed Red Shoes for encouraging him to attack and then failing to support him. French soldiers had shown considerable courage in a very difficult attack, although Bienville chastened many as wretched blackguards. Bienville was kinder to local troops, and he freed several slaves for valor. The already fearsome reputation of the Chickasaw was enhanced by their twin victories. Not a single Chickasaw warrior was captured. They proved to be deadly shots and merciless in combat. Writing over 100 years later, the politician turned historian Charles Gaillard described the Chickasaw as uttering such appalling whoops and shouts, such blood-freezing shrieks and fiendish yells, that we would have thought that the thousands of demons were rioting in one of their favorite haunts in pandemonium. Gaillard's telling, even if colored by purple prose, conveyed the horror felt by the defeated French forces. In 1737, Mingo Oma asked for peace and sent the French a deerskin map of Chickasaw lands, which he crafted himself. Bienville turned down Mingo Oma's offer. In 1739, Bienville again struck the Chickasaw, this time with an even larger contingent of slave soldiers. They razed several villages, but lost hundreds to disease. In 1743, Bienville left Louisiana never to return. He lived comfortably in France, but failed to convince Louis XV to develop the colony, which was seen as a drain on French resources. During the 7 Years' War, the city was barely considered in most British and French military plans. The Chickasaw War had no clear winner. The Chickasaw tribes were wrecked by the conflict and never regained their regional dominance. Yet the French came away far worse. The failure to push aside the Chickasaw prevented Louisiana from joining with Canada and limited French expansion. Except for a half-hearted attempt in 1752, the French never again took on the Chickasaw and therefore could not control the Mississippi River Valley. Most of the unprofitable Louisiana colony was given to Spain in 1762, while the rest was folded into Britain's new Florida colony. Bienville pled with Louis XV to keep Louisiana, but to no avail. Mingo Oma, meanwhile, strengthened his ties to Britain in 1771. Ironically, the alliance was forged during a meeting in Mobile, a city founded by Bienville and Iberville in 1702.